Pure Heart, the most famous band at the time in Hawaii.
Back in 98, we released our first album and won a bunch of awards. And then 99 released our second album. And then by 2000, we were done. We have disbanded. So we go our separate ways, and it's a long time. Yeah, we don't talk. Then after a while, it's like, I got to get it settled some way. And the only way to do that is to...
So with all of your background for music and band, what would be your bits of wisdom for other people that are in bands now?
You're always going to start off with...
And then you went into real estate. Now you're a top producing realtor and you sell multi-million-dollar homes. So what makes one realtor better than the other?
Well, it's a lot of things. I mean...
So when you're mentoring the new realtor, what are the common things you're seeing that you have to teach, that each of them have to kind of learn?
In the beginning, it's all...
Greater Good Radio, connect, learn, heal, and grow, is brought to you by Brain Gain Hawaii, a boutique executive recruiting, career development, and coaching firm. Learn more at braingainhi.com.
So welcome to Greater Good Radio. We're here with Jon Yamasato. You may know his name because he's famous for being in the band called Pure Heart, kind of the Hawaii heartthrob, teen throb, but island music style. You know, I saw you from a distance when you first got started the public music piece as a entertainer in Pure Heart, like the most famous band at the time, I think, in Hawaii.
At the time, it was very busy.
You guys were in high school, and that was amazing. Jake Shimabukuro, one of the most famous ukulele virtuosos, he was launched from that as well. And then, you know, you went into real estate. Now you're a top producing realtor and you sell multi-million-dollar homes. And you also have a podcast and the radio.
High Sessions.
High Sessions. Yeah, not radio, but online and TV and so on.
In fact, by the time this airs, High Sessions will be back on TV.
Oh, there you go. What channel?
So we're going to be on Kiku.
What channel is that?
KIKU. You know, it's different channels on different, depending on if you're Oceanic or if you're Spectrum. Or that's the same thing. Sorry. Oceanic or Spectrum or Hawaiian Telecom.
Okay.
So I don't have the channels on me now, but I know that we're coming back. So by the time this airs, we'll be back on TV.
What if it's like Google TV? Then are you on that?
I don't think we're on Google. Well, YouTube, right?
Okay.
So you can find us on YouTube. That's where most people watch us anyway.
So you just go on demand for that.
Yeah, on demand, and then and then the rest will be on local TV.
Well, I mean, we're on the subject one. Maybe explain, like, what is High Sessions? How did it start? Why did it start? What is,
High Sessions is a music channel. It really just started as a YouTube channel, right? I was kind of yearning for outlet for music, and I'd already gone through my Pure Heart days and the traveling days with Dennis Kamakahi, going all around the country and playing. And I thought, well, I got to stay kind of close to home because I have kids now. But what can I do musically that I can still do but not take away from them? And then we came up with this idea for a video show. At the same time, at the time, there was no outlet for high definition video, high quality video for local artists, at least that I could tell.
What year was that?
This is 2011.
Okay.
So YouTube, I think, came out 2009, something like that. So yeah, so this is only 2 years into YouTube, and talked to my buddy Dave, and I said, hey, you're a video guy. Do you think you can do something with video if I bring in the artists? And he said, yeah, I think we can do something. We created the show, not thinking we would do anything with it. It was just kind of like, oh, we'll just do it once a month and have fun, and get friends over, and that's what it was. And now it's just all-consuming.
Wait, but if you said you're going to just do it once a month and have fun, but you were shooting like 5 cameras and you had a whole crew and lights and everything. So is that what you were doing in the beginning, or it was just bring them and...
Yeah, well, it was, okay, so Dave used to be a web guy.
Yeah.
But he wanted to transition into video production. So I was like, hey, you can use this as a way to test stuff out. And, so he went all balls to the wall on how to create the content because he was learning, right? So it was exciting, and he wanted to try to do something different and nice. And then the rest of the crew were all friends of mine that I thought, hey, they're all music lovers. They would want to come and volunteer their time and hang out, and so it was just a bunch of volunteers that got together. So. And
then was there a point where it became a business then?
You know when it became a business? When I ran into you.
Oh, okay.
a couple years later, right? This is like 2013 or 2014, and you go, yeah, you can monetize these videos, and I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, oh, you just flipped a switch, and all of a sudden, like money started coming in. I'm like, oh my god, we can actually pay people. So that's when it started. But realistically, I mean, to this day, everybody does it for a discounted amount, and our goal is just to make enough money every year to break even. So it's still not a money making adventure, but yeah.
What would you say is the impact of that show?
Well, I mean, it's kind of funny because uh, when I was doing that show, I actually had a revelation about my band because, you see, these things lag, right? Like, you don't know the impact you're making at the time, and then later on you find out because people then tell you years later, right? So as we were filming High Sessions, people would come in and be like, hey, I used to listen to Pure Heart, and that's what got me into the ukulele, and now I'm here playing it, and then, I used to play this song. So a lot of artists would come in and say stuff like that to me, which made me think, like, wow, I didn't really, when we were doing Pure Heart back in the day, I didn't really understand, I guess, who we were influencing, because it's pre-internet, right? And then so like High Sessions, we're just shooting these videos, but there's a bunch of other session type shows that have come out, not even in Hawaii. There's this other show called Sugar Shack Sessions. They're very popular. They're out of Florida. And they had written to us saying, hey, we saw your content and we wanted to make something similar. So they're more like, they do more reggae stuff, like Southern California reggae scene. And they've just taken it to the next level where they do like a lot of live stuff. They're just more of a production company for music, But stuff like that has branched off from what we've done with the High Sessions thing. So that's pretty neat to see. And like I hope we've set the standard so that I've seen over the years content get better on YouTube, for these musicians.
So if you took High Sessions as a whole and you said, okay, this is the most impactful story that I can say out of this for an individual, let's say, then what would it be?
Impactful story. Let me put it this way. It has been a very good learning experience as to how web works. And I'll tie it into Pure Heart as well and High Sessions, because those have been kind of, in the music field, at least, my successes. There's been a lot of failures, but those are successes. When you have a passion for something and you're consistent at working at it, that is the attribute or the magic sauce that's going to make something successful. You see, because a lot of shows came out after us, right? There was a bunch of TV shows that came out, and people would say, oh, there's a show that they're doing the exact same High Sessions format. Are you guys worried? And I would say, well, first of all, I'm not worried, because we're not, it is a hobby, right? So, and my philosophy is just getting the artist's music out there for people to see. So if someone else is doing a good job and artists from Hawaii are getting out there, that's great. Like I don't have any problem with that. But at the same time, the difficult part is not creating a nice video. Anybody can create a nice video. Can you create 400 nice videos over a period of a decade and, still have your crew and still be friends with everybody? That's the challenge of any of these type of projects, is how do you hold it together? How do you manage through all these troubles and problems? That was the big learning point, or the insight, I guess, I got from doing all these projects over the years.
So maybe give me an example then. Like, tell us a story about a time where you have a rupture and then how the repair went and so on.
Well, okay, so we've had a bunch of people come and go throughout the years, and so it's a lot of like finding people to take on different types of work that maybe they didn't in the past. I guess the big challenge every year has been financial. Like, how do we, because we do want to pay everybody, the crew, something. So we would sit down. So, one year we did a Kickstarter, and then one year we did, we'd get a call from like a large corporation and they'd want us to do something. And it's just a matter of like trying to figure out, okay, like how do we monetize this, or how do we get around? I'm trying to think, like, the TV show was a big challenge because, we had no TV experience, right?
I think I think what I'm trying to say is like, if you have the same crew that's been around for 11 years,
Yeah.
like retention in any organization or business is hard.
Yeah.
So what would be the most important
Oh, I
things
see.
that you learned in order to do that?
Well, I think for me, it's all about prepping people and communication because for the
So
most,
setting the right expectations.
yeah, like I think most people are pretty understanding if they know what to expect. So in our company, there's no secret about what funds are coming in, what the project schedule looks like. It's all laid out at the beginning of the year. This is how many shoots we're going to do. This is what's coming in. This is what we're going to pay you guys. And just being consistent with that. And the other thing is, I always tell the crew, like, if you have an idea that makes money, that's going to bring more funds in, and you want to run with it, then we have no problem giving you a good portion of that
Mhm.
funds. Like, for example, no one wanted to do the Kickstarter. And then one person finally said, I'll volunteer for that. So, a good portion of the Kickstarter funds went to her because she did such a good job on the Kickstarter fund. But yeah, I mean, whether it's high sessions or even with the real estate and all that stuff, I think most people don't look ahead 2 or 3 steps and prep. And that's when people get all, oh, what the heck, because they get caught off guard by whatever surprise you throw at them. And I think that's on the real estate side, that's what good experienced realtors do, is they kind of prep you ahead of time so that you're not getting hit with these last minute aha moments that are negative. And similarly with high sessions, because I think we're so open with everything, there's a pretty good level of trust there. And yeah, and everybody knows that the main focus of the project is not money based. It is promoting the artists and getting the music out there. And so as long they understand that way before they come into the fray.
So what you're saying is your mission is clear,
Yeah.
your
yeah.
vision is clear. You want to set expectations as explicitly and clearly as possible, and then that's the main things.
Yeah.
that I heard.
And then, and then prepping people, like
Okay.
ahead of time. Yeah. Yeah. You say it so much better than I do.
When you guys did Pure Heart,
Uh-huh.
right? You were in high school, and then you all went your separate ways,
Right.
and then it was kind of a long period of time before some of you kind of even talked to each other after a
Sure.
long period. Would you be willing to share about that kind of, reconnection and how that came about and what it's meant to you and things like that?
Yeah. We were all very young at the time. And as you can imagine, there was forces from all sides pulling us in all different directions.
Like what?
Uh, well, we had like, toward the end there, Jake was trying to do a ukulele school, and he was doing some solo stuff, and then I was working on some side projects. Lopaka's always Lopaka. So I probably won't talk about him, but he's pretty consistent. The guy just wants to play music and have a good time. He's never been difficult, you know? But there's just so much going on, and um, looking back on it, I mean, uh, yeah, everybody had their own ideas as to what direction we were going to go in and stuff like that, and anyway, so we go our separate ways, and it's a long time. Yeah, we don't talk.
Was it a hard breakup?
Yeah, it was very difficult. Yeah, and a lot of hurt feelings and stuff like that, and whatnot. But I guess so. I guess they say time heals wounds or stuff like that, and I just never felt like we had completed what we were planning to do together. You got to understand. I mean, Jake and I were friends from way before that. So, and we were very good friends. Like he would sleep over at my house all the time. We would stay up all night talking story about what our goals were and what we had planned for us and the band and stuff like that. And so when that all fell apart, it was tough. Like it was tough. And he was there doing some hard times for me too, because I was still in high school when he was in college. And you have your high school dramas and things like that. So anyway, after a while, it just became one of those things that you didn't talk to somebody for like a year, and then it goes 2 years, and the next thing you know, it's just been 7 years you haven't talked to somebody, life is weird like that because when you're young, you feel like, when you friends graduate from high school, you go like, oh man, we got to still keep in touch. And, we're going to see each other all the time. And they move away to the mainland. And then you see them during the summertime because they come back for Christmas. And then after a while, like they get married or they have a girlfriend and now they're not coming back as much. And then next thing you know, like my friends from high school, I see them once a year, twice a year, maybe, you know? But it's still, when you still see them, you're still friends. But it goes the opposite way too, right? You have a falling out with somebody, you don't talk to them. Next thing you know, you're moving on with life, and so are they, right? And then it's 3 years, 4 years, 5 years go by, and you don't talk to them, you don't think about them, kind of thing. I mean, it's kind of hard with the PR because I'm always kind of in that same business, but yeah, it just kind of happened to be like that after a while. But it was really the high sessions thing that made me think about like, wow, I didn't realize we kind of meant stuff to people. You just think like, oh, people enjoyed the music, and now we're done, and that's it. Life goes on. We do other things, but yeah, when I saw these other young artists that I thought were very talented coming through, and they were like, "Hey, man, you're the reason why I'm even here." I thought, wow, maybe I'm harboring too much anger or something like that. So then, yeah, one day I was just in the neighborhood. I just I stopped by Jake's house. I knocked on the door, and then I'm like, "Hey, haven't talked to you in a while. You want to sit down?" He's like, "Oh," he just happened to be home, and so we just sat down and talked. And then that was the beginning of this next chapter.
So you just knock on the door.
Mm-hmm.
He answers it, and it's kind of like, what?
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" I'm like, "Well, I was just in the neighborhood, and we haven't talked to each other in a while. So, what are you doing right now?" And that's me. Like I'm kind of like I'll do things on a whim, you know.
And then what happened when you were talking then?
So we started catching up, and obviously both of us knew of what each other was doing, and then that was nice. And some months went by, and then he had this like Jake and Friends concert coming up the next year. So he said, "Yeah, do you guys want to do that?" I said, "Oh, okay," So talked to everybody, and yeah, we ended up doing it, and it's good. So now we just play kind of when things come up, and he's got his thing, and I got my thing, and Lopaka's got his thing, and everybody's doing their own thing. But every once in a while, we can get together and enjoy the music, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So it's good.
So do you wish that you had done that earlier?
No, I don't think so, because I think when you have these type of very heavy emotional breakup, it's like a marriage, right? Like you gotta wait until everybody's ready, or else I think it'll. Because honestly, at this point, everything that happened in the past is completely squashed. Like I don't even think about it at all, and I'm pretty sure that the other guys don't either. We're like, it's just a lot of fun, And so, but I think if any of us were harboring some of those issues, then you'd have those kind of situations where someone says something, kind of a side comment, and then it festers into something else, right? And
Okay, so, and you can stop me at any point in time.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the thing that I'm curious on then is, with such a kind of feelings are hurt, and feelings can be hurt to the extent that there was feelings, right? So you guys were super tight.
Yeah.
And then you have a pretty strong rupture. Like what were the important pieces in there to come up with the reconciliation that there could be real forgiveness to happen?
You know what? Like no one, I don't ever think we ever said sorry to each other or anything. I just think enough time had gone by. It was just understood that whatever happened before, that's just done, and then we're moving forward from here. And I don't know how Jake is, and I don't know how Lopaka is, but I'm very much like that. Like I can get very upset, but if there's an agreement, like okay, we're cool now, then we're cool, and that's it. That's just a line that I draw, and everything else is forgotten. So it kind of depends on the person too.
That's actually a kind of an interesting characteristic because, a lot of times people will just try to sweep it under the rug.
Yeah.
Because they don't want the conflict.
Right.
And then, but it's still live.
Right.
You know what I mean? Which makes it uncomfortable. That could be in any type of relationship.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was curious on that.
Yeah. So just my personality is like, say I'm gonna buy a car, I'll do all my research, and I'll kind of like think about it, as it dwell on my mind. But like once I decided, like, oh, okay, this is what I want, I'll just walk into the car dealership and be like, this is what I want, and I just buy it. Like you don't have to sell me on anything. So like I think similarly with relationships, in my head I'll do a lot of like analyzing and thinking about it. But once I've decided like, hey, we're cool. Even Dave. So Dave is my partner in high sessions, and but when the whole thing with Pure Heart was going down, he's friends with all of us. He was there from the beginning, and when all of it was going down, I was telling him, like, we were having this one conversation at some point. I said, Dave, do not get involved with this. This is very very touchy, and stuff like that. And he was trying to be a good person, and he still tried to get involved and get things back together and stuff. And then I didn't talk to him for like a few years,
To Dave?
to Dave. Yeah.
Oh, why? Well, you weren't doing high sessions, or
No, this is way before high sessions. Yeah.
wait, Dave, who you do high sessions with, is the same? Was your friend from high school?
Oh yeah, I've known him from high school.
Oh,
So
Oh.
so yeah, so the way I met
Okay.
Dave was Pure Heart played at his. So he used to have an internet company back in the day when there was still dial up. So he
Oh.
owned a company called Internet Advantage, and we played at their opening. And then because we played at the opening, I wanted to learn how to code, and he wanted to learn how to play guitar.
Mhm.
So we made a deal, like, hey, I'll come in and I'll teach you guitar if you teach me how to code. And we both don't know how to do. Well, Dave knows more guitar than I know coding, so I guess he got the better deal.
Oh, so Dave was trying to like we do
Mm.
a lot of times when we see our friends have some type of rupture, and then it's like, oh my gosh, it's painful for us, so we want to jump in and
Yeah.
fix this and
Yeah,
solve
yeah,
it. Same
yeah.
way with like our kids or our family and so on. And then because he was doing that, and you're like, nah, don't do it, then you kind of cut him too.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
which makes sense.
So there was a lot of like,
How did that repair then?
Yeah, well, then I thought about it for a long time, and then a couple years had gone by, and I thought, "Yeah, Dave's a really good friend. Like he's very important to me, and I don't want him not in my life. So I just called him out of the blue, and I'm like, "Hey, this is why I was upset, but I'm not upset anymore. And if you're not upset with me, if you're cool with me, like I would like to repair this friendship." And he said, "Yeah, I'm cool with that." And then after that, like, never came up again.
So that's interesting.
So
'cause-
yeah, so I'll dwell on it in my head, but at a certain point, I'll, I'm kind of weighing, whether this person is, important.
I'm asking on that because it's kind of
Yeah.
me. It like as I'm contemplating on this, I actually have very close friend who we're kind of not talking right now, and constantly go back and forth between should I do this, because to me it's like this is a misunderstanding, and it's like all the mental gymnastics that go on with it. So well, I'm debating on
And I
what
guess
I'm doing with that.
I
too.
guess the way I look at it is like if it's eating at me, like on a
every day I think about this one.
yeah, then after a while it's like I got to get it settled some way, and the only way to do that is to either. And I have a hard time, like, people can just forgive internally, but I have to like forgive them like face to face.
Mm.
There've been friends or people that I've known over the years that maybe I don't want to keep the relationship there, but it's still there's something unsettled, and we'll talk and we'll cool it out and we're all cool. But then I don't continue the relationship. It's just but it's something at least I put on the side and I can move on, and it's not still tying me down mentally.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's the whole thing about forgiveness too, right? Is that you
Right.
don't have to move similarly or so on. You can just settle it, and then you
And I-
decide at that point what you want to do.
Yeah, and I think that's what helped with the Jake and all that kind of stuff was because enough time had passed and we were both. I mean, obviously he's on this very good trajectory in his life, but at this point, even I'm settled in a new career. I have other musical things that I'm doing that are very fulfilling and stuff. So it wasn't like when we get back together, it's not like I have to tie myself to him or something, or we have to do things together. We can say we're cool, and we can go. We have our own paths that we're going, and we can jump in at any time and be together. But I think if there was this like dependency
Mm.
where like I was forgiving him because I wanted to get into his on his coattail or something like that, or wanted to be, then that's not the same,
That's
right?
disingenuous, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
like an agenda.
Yeah. So I felt at that point, 14 years later, that yeah, enough time had passed, and we're on our own things, that neither of us would be doing this because we needed something from the other one.
Wait, how old are you?
I'm 45.
Oh, 45, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm 50 now, so I'll be thinking, well, some of it I might just forget because
Yeah, yeah,
because I
yeah.
can't remember anything
That's
these days. You know what I mean? So
That's true. A lot of
Yeah.
it gets foggy after a while
Yeah,
too,
it's
right? Like you're like, what? Sometimes like, why was I upset with this person, or or what happened with this? But so
yeah, that's when it gets when you're like, I know I don't like them or something.
Yeah,
But I don't
yeah,
remember
yeah.
why,
yeah.
and it could be something so dumb. You know what I
Right,
mean at the
right.
time. So yeah, I spent a
Yeah.
lot of time contemplating in this area.
And I think that's part of being a young person, and you're trying to find your path, and you're competitive because everyone's competing for mates and money and power and stuff. And at a certain point, you hopefully you're comfortable in your own skin, right?
Yeah. Although when I hear that, when you say it's like mates and power, I mean the underlying piece that I see is like people are competing with themselves to get out of shame.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
The
yeah.
feeling of I'm bad, something's wrong with me, I'm defective, someone's judging me, that kind of piece, right?
Right,
Which is
right.
to prove yourself. And the hard thing is that when you get to like our age, right, which is this age we call middlescence, 45 to 60, right? The
Okay.
opposite of adolescence, where your hormones go the other way,
Right, right,
and
right,
your life
right.
changes the other way. You're coming out of the workforce and that whole deal. The accomplishment stuff doesn't work anymore
Hmm,
to kind of get out of it.
right.
And then what's left is the work, which then that's why I'm asking so many questions on that one, because these are typically questions that
Well,
come up
and
in the
then
conversations that I have.
the music business is really difficult because you're publicly ranked, and like everyone's when you're doing your own, if you're an electrician or something, you can kind of, you're doing your own thing, and not too many people know exactly how successful or not you are. You can kind of, but in the music thing, it's like
It's
very,
like entertainment, right?
yeah,
You're always in the public eye, so it's social media before social media.
yeah. So
So, yeah.
it's different,
I think maybe for anyone who is not familiar with Pure Heart, how would you describe that, and how did it form?
We're a trio band. We do mostly cover music, but because of the instrumentation, we have guitar, ukulele, and percussion. I think we kind of take to me, we're inventive as to how we structure our music around these these older songs and things like that. And back in '98, we released our first album and won a bunch of awards. And then '99 released our second album, and then by 2000 we were done. We have disbanded although we had been playing since '94. So when the albums came out, we were, it felt like we came out of nowhere, and we're fast, high and down, but we had been playing for a long time before that, a
And-
lot.
Well, you guys were how old when you started in '94?
I was 16, 17.
Okay, so you guys all started
Mhm.
kind of like sophomore year or something like that.
I was a sophomore. Jake was a senior, and then Lopaka was the only one in college.
And you guys met how?
So I met Jake because we were in student council together. I always tell everybody we have like the nerdiest Hawaiian music story ever. Yeah, and I used to see him carrying his ukulele, and when I met Jake, I hadn't even played an instrument yet. I mean, I kind of did because the guys at school were playing ukulele, trying to sing and stuff. So I was like, "Hey, man, where do I get an ukulele?" He's like, "Oh, go to Kamaka." So I got a Kamaka ukulele, and then
Oh, like that.
yeah, and that's how I started, was
Mhm.
getting. And so he and I then started playing together. Then to make a long story short, Jake started working at House of Music in Ala Moana, and Lopaka worked there. So he would talk to Lopaka and play, and then he said, "Oh, I have a band with this guy John," and we brought Lopaka in actually to teach our current percussionist how to do more. And then once I saw Lopaka, I'm like, "Whoa, why don't we get this guy in the band? Like, he's great, So we ended up getting asking our percussion. The percussionist that we had was just like my friend who was like, "Well, I'll play," but he had no idea what he was doing. So we asked him to step down and put Lopaka in there. And then, it's funny, like we had a bunch of people come and go over the years, but it was just us three that always kind of just worked. Like we never could find a guy that stuck, for the fourth guy.
Why?
I guess like we had a guy that was a bass player that was good, and he could sing background vocals, so that was good. But then he wasn't from this island; he was from another, and he ended up moving back. And we had another few guys that came in. Personalities didn't match. We had a couple other guys that came in, and they just you can tell, right? Like there's guys that want to play because they like the idea of being a musician, and then there's like musicians that just play because they have to.
Or how do
Like,
you
it's
tell that?
you can tell because you see the level of improvement exponentially get better because they're playing all the time,
Mm.
right? And then they come to the practice, they're ready, they have new ideas, they try to contribute, right? Versus guys that they learn the songs, but then they just do the same thing all the time, right? It's just like anything. I mean, like if you have a craft, you have a skill,
And an obsession.
in a session, right? You're not going to settle for like you're a woodworker, right? You frame windows. Okay, that's what you do doing that. But probably if you're like really into woodworking, you're going to go home and make pens or
Mhm.
make a table or something. You can tell the guys that are, because they'll come to the show and be like, hey, what if I tried this? Or I have this idea for that. And that's where sometimes it leads to problems, right? Because sometimes the ideas other people don't like, and then they get into, but those are the ones that are the real, to me, musicians.
It reminds me, I was flying home from Japan when my wife and I were recently married, so like 20 years ago kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching this guy next to me, and all he was doing was watching on his laptop music, and he was doing music stuff on his computer, and then had headphones. He was going like the whole time. I was like, oh wow, man, I noticed that you're pretty into that music. He's like, oh yeah, I'm super into it. I go, yeah, are you guys in like a band or something? He goes, yeah, we're in a band. I was like, what's your band called? He said, oh, we're the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh my God, was it Chad Smith?
I don't know. It was the long-haired guy.
Oh.
Not the main Anthony Kiedis
Yeah,
guy, but the other guy.
the
And he kind of looked at me like,
yeah.
Red Hot Chili Peppers. Kind of looked at me with a face like, you don't know who we are. But I was like, I don't know. I mean, I know who you are, but
Yeah.
And
I
then,
don't know every band member's name,
but
and what they
all of
look like.
them were like doing stuff music-wise on the plane. They look tired, you know what I mean? And they're just doing it. So I understand that. It's like there's a difference between like passion, obsession, purpose, and just hobby,
Right.
cruising.
Right.
I go to band class. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
there's a difference.
Yeah. So you can tell. As a musician, you can tell. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, with all of your background for music and band and the whole thing, what would be your bits of wisdom for other people that are in bands now? Say, John, give us your top 3 most important things you could tell us about being in a band.
Well, you're always going to start off imitating somebody, right? Like whoever your idol is or whatever. So like I like Billie Eilish, so I want to sound like Billie. So you do a lot of Billie Eilish covers and whatnot. At a certain point, you're going to want to be creative. You're going to step out of your comfort zone and do something a little different. That was actually what Jake and Lopaka brought to the table. I just always wanted to sound like the Kyle Crater Boys. I wanted to be a Kyle Crater Boy clone, right? But they wanted to
They're way bigger than you.
Huh?
No, like their size.
Oh, yeah.
Those guys are way
yeah.
bigger than you.
They're definitely big.
Yeah.
But then Jake always wanted to do jazz stuff. He wanted to do like Latin jazz, things like that, which I wasn't really into, like, and I was like, no, like Troy Fernandez, man, Troy Fernandez.
Mhm.
But because he, thought outside the box, and Lopaka's always trying to add these new rhythms and stuff, that's what made us kind of unique, So, instead of becoming a clone, I think we were, something a little different enough that people liked it. So everyone's going to start off, like I said, trying to imitate somebody. But once you feel like you're comfortable with that, try to move it somewhere. Like try to put your own kind of spin on it, And then the second thing is just, it's funny. I would say is treat it like a business. Show up early, be nice to people, because those people are gonna eventually be your supporter, right? And it's crazy, man. Like I deal with musicians all the time, and it blows my mind. Like especially like they don't call back. You know, you try to get a hold of them, they don't call back, they don't email back, and you know you're trying to do this or do that. And to be honest, though, with high sessions, I feel like something's happened in the world because everyone's much better now. And the weird thing now is that a lot of people have management, which before, you know, you talk to Roby, like you just talking to Roby, you know, you don't have it. But now everyone's got like someone that you talk to, which actually helps a lot. But yeah, you know, and I'm busy. I have a job. I have kids. I have high sessions. I have like 4 jobs, you know, and I call people back. So when people don't call me back, that it bothers me because and you know if you do enough of that, you know, unless you're like ridiculously talented. I mean,
Then you're never getting invited back to high sessions.
yeah, I mean, it's true. Like, well, there's only a couple people at high sessions I think I would not work with again. I mean, and we've filmed like hundreds of people, right? Like, cause you know, I've been on boards of charity things where we're doing events and things like that, and you know, there's discussions like, do we bring these people back for the next one? And like, well, they were difficult, this or that, or you know, whatever. But
So
yeah,
so be authentic, run it like a business, and call people back.
yeah, just that's pretty much it. And that does not just for musicians, man. Contractors are like that too, as you know, or like a lot of people are like that.
Yeah.
And you can do it in a way that's pleasant in the sense that, you know, maybe you don't want to do that gig or you don't want to do that job or something like that. And instead of ghosting the person, just say, I have another commitment at that time, so I'm not going to be able to do it. That people can accept that, right? But
Yeah.
they don't like it when you don't call them back. They're trying to plan their thing, and then next thing you know, it's weeks later, and they're scrambling because
That's actually not just musicians. It's funny because on that note, I have a person in town
Mhm.
that is the executive director of a large nonprofit that was asking me for some help with stuff. I did it.
Yep.
And then like ghosted me.
Right.
And I'm like, seriously? This is weird.
Yeah.
And I'm not used to that. Yeah, but I mean, yeah. It's kind of a thing.
One of my biggest pet peeves, you know, because everyone's time is very valuable. So I don't know. It's just, to me, it's a little bit disrespectful to ghost people. Maybe I've done it to other people. If I haven't,
Well, the younger generation is kind of normal though. No,
That's
like
true.
for Gen Z, it's kind of just a normal thing. It's like, I'm over it, and then you just
Well,
so they're cool with it. I think a lot of them they just do it.
well,
normal.
it's because they don't have this type of interaction, right? Everything is text and email. So if you just don't respond, and then that's it. That's considered a no, you know. Versus
Yeah, like you don't leave a voicemail. Like you just
Right.
call, and then
Right.
it's like I called you.
yeah, right, exactly, yeah. I called you. I tried to get back in touch with you. You didn't pick up, so that's it. Yeah. So it is different. Yeah.
So real estate. How did the real estate thing come into play?
So real estate, I graduated with a degree in teaching and then quickly decided that wasn't going to be for me. And so I spent a few months unemployed, which I always tell people, man, I was in the best shape of my life because I would go to the gym every day and I'd work in the yard. So I was nice and tan and good looking. But yeah, I was looking
You're
all
nice
over.
and tanned and good looking now.
No, I'm not tan. I'm white. Lost my tan and getting old. But anyway, my uncle, who was in real estate, said, "Hey, why don't you try real estate?" I'm like, I don't even know what that is, you know. She said, "Well, go take the licensing class." And so I said, "Okay." I had nothing else going. I took the real estate licensing class, and I was scheduled to take the mailman test,
Mhm.
you know. And I thought, okay. So I made this like promise to myself. I said, if I get through this real estate class and they don't offer me a physics job for school, you know, I was going to be a physics teacher, well, then I'll do the real estate. And so I went through the whole real estate class, and then right when I got my license, I got a job offer from, I think it was Aloha for physics. I was like, oh man, what do I do? But then there was this guy Rod Mukai, who's was my mentor and teacher in real estate for many, many years. Yeah, we ended up connecting, and I sat down with him and interviewed, and I just enjoyed talking to him so much. I'm like, okay, I'm going to try this out. I'm going to give this a shot. And that's history.
So he was your mentor?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I worked for him for 9 years. 9 years under his like group. And it was great, man. It was such a good time. It's an interesting business. It's a difficult business, but there's a lot of fun in it too, you know.
What have you seen in changes over the time period you've been in it?
Oh man, it's interesting because everything has gotten a lot faster. Because you got to imagine, I started in 2003, which doesn't seem that long ago, but that's 20 years ago. So we didn't have scanners. Everything was faxed, if anything. So it's a lot of wet signatures. So it's a lot of driving. Like, I got to drive to Evan's house now, grab this thing, you sign it, then I drive to the other agent's office, drop it off because their deadline for offers is whatever. To, oh, now we're going to scan this thing and email it back. To, now it's DocuSign. I don't even scan it. It's all digital. Just you sign it online, it just boop goes, right? So a lot of the paperwork aspect of the job has changed, and now there's like a whole new industry of what's called transaction managers who basically handle your back end.
Like a loan processor?
Yes, kind of like a loan process. So once it goes into escrow, you give them the file, they kind of run with it, make sure that all the documents are signed and all that kind of stuff. And that's a fee. So you're getting paid a little bit less, but they're taking a lot of that work off you. And so now I find I'm more, doing the face-to-face kind of stuff, driving out to appointments. And
you can stay more productive.
Yeah, stay more productive, but then also like add to customer service. I think nowadays clients are a little bit more like, they want you to do more and they want to see your face more. They want to see you around.
Well, there's so much more access to information for them. I mean, you're going to have clients coming in that some know more than the realtor.
Yeah. And there's a lot that think they know more. So that's one of the challenges, right? But yeah, for us, like we try to be present at showings so that we can give good feedback and turn the lights on stuff, and just try to show more value, help with the prep of the house and things like that, which I didn't do as much before, but now that I have the extra time.
So what makes one realtor better than the other?
Well, it's a lot of things. I mean, okay, I'll talk about all aspects because there are a lot of good realtors, and I'm not going to say that just because I'm 20 years in the business. So in the beginning, you have people who are really hungry. Newer realtors typically will work and do things that older realtors will not do because just from a time constraint perspective. But, they lack experience, and you say, well, what does experience bring you? Well, experience to me is talking about earlier, is the prep and the setting expectations. As soon as I have a contract and as soon as I walk in a house, a lot of times I can anticipate problems that may be coming up. So I'm working on them behind the scenes early so that it doesn't come up as a surprise. Because the worst part is you get into a transaction and you think you're going to buy this house and then something happens, right? But if you know it ahead of time, you can kind of plan for it and then either address it or address it in the pricing. So I'll give you an example. We had a house that had an unpermitted structure, which is very common in Hawaii, unpermitted structure. But the person who was living in the house had moved the kitchen into the unpermitted area. And most people, I think, as newer agents, I don't know if they would understand this, but if you have an unpermitted area, that in itself is not a problem. But the way that the appraiser looks at that is that the unpermitted area doesn't exist, right? So technically that's not there on paper, right? So if you move the kitchen there and it's an outdoor area, then technically your kitchen is sitting in your yard, right? And they're not going to give you a loan if you don't have a kitchen in the house. So it causes that kind of an issue. So I think, having an experienced agent, you kind of solve for that early so that it doesn't become a problem later at the end. Because, sometimes you get in a situation where you got to sell And if you're coming up with these things, now you're paying, right? You're forking over money because you didn't catch this thing earlier.
So how much of your time are you spending on real estate, and then how much of your time on music and high sessions and other stuff?
Okay, so real estate takes up probably 70% of my time, and then 20% of my time is high sessions, 5% of my time is music, and 5% of my time is family. Nah, I probably do more the family stuff than that,
Like 7.
but it feels like, yeah, it feels like I just am, like encapsulated with real estate deals and high session stuff. So it's mostly real estate and high sessions. The music stuff, like I'm at the point of my career now that if I can come and play what I play, then I will gladly show up wherever you want, whenever you want, and I will come and play. But as far as like the creativity side on that side, like I just don't feel, I don't know, I just don't, I've lost the passion, I guess. I don't
You've
know.
lost the loving feeling?
Yeah, I've lost the loving feeling.
You mean
So-
to create?
yeah,
So the creation then moves into high sessions?
yeah. I think that's where I find my that tickles that nerve for me, is on the high session side. And even in real estate too. I mean, I've real estate seems very businessy, but there's a lot of creation in the sense that once you establish your business, you can help other people. You can learn about different types of real estate. We're working on a building that's half commercial, half residential right now. That's kind of interesting, beyond just the regular house kind of thing.
What do you mean? What do you mean you're working on it and it's interesting?
Well, we're going to be selling a commercial property out in the middle of town, and it's got a commercial element where it's got downstairs there's commercial space, so you can run business out of there, and now up top there's 3 housing units, so you can have rentals.
Oh, like Rainbow Drive-In kind.
Yeah, kind of like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, yeah. So that's not something that I do every day. So there's a little bit more to learn and work on with that. So there's you can be creative in real estate, and like for example, like I have a new person that I work with, and she's relatively new in the business, so it's like bringing her on board, kind of training her up, and you get to see that excitement again through their eyes. So I find that to be quote unquote creative.
So when you're mentoring the new realtor
Yeah.
or the new real estate agent, what are the common things you're seeing that you have to teach, that each of them have to kind of learn?
In the beginning, it's all technical. There's so much paperwork, and especially like what you say to people, because we are bound by certain ethics and guidelines, and for the most part you can speak freely, but I can't say things like if you buy this house, it's going to appreciate like at least 10% in the next 10 years, because we're technically not financial advisors, right? So you can't give out appreciation. You can't.
You cannot make a claim
Yeah, you make a claim
in
that
financial advice.
and there's a ton of like those kind of things, like even technically in the MLS, it says like, 5-minute walk to the beach. Not supposed to say that because that's discriminatory against people who can't.
Oh.
There's all these
Yeah.
like little things. So in the beginning, it's a lot of like, how do you fill out the forms? What do you say to a person, especially because you sit with a new client, they're asking a million questions and you don't know, so how do you answer that kind of stuff? So there's a lot of training in that aspect.
Mhm.
But it's fun, I mean,
Wait, so once they get through the the technical stuff of it, what are the kind of common pieces that they all struggle with?
well, everybody should. I mean, even for myself at this point in my life, to this point, is getting more business, right? So then it becomes a matter of, well, how do we get more business? There are people who do things like online leads, and they're very good at that, and they're that's kind of their bread and butter. That's what they do. So then the problem solving skill becomes like, how do we generate more online leads that I can grab, and how do I convert these online leads to sales, right? Personally, for me, my business comes from my sphere of influence. So it's all the past clients, people that I know. And so the challenge is, well, how do I keep in touch with all these people? Because over the 20 years, you get to a point where it's like, there's more people than I can, technically touch every day.
Mhm.
So we're having, in a couple weeks, I'm going to invite your brother because he's a quote unquote client. but we rented out a movie theater. We're going to watch Across the Spider-Verse, So that's a fun way to do it. And then, of course, there's like more traditional ways of calling, asking for referrals, things like that. But that's, I guess, where the creative part comes in.
Is it expensive to rent out a movie theater?
It's not. Well, I guess, don't quote me on this because I don't know exactly how much it costs. But I think it was a couple grand, just over two. But then I'm doing it with a friend of mine. So we're splitting it.
It's like a party kind of, right? So
Yeah.
Figure,
It's like a party. And then you can choose whether or not you have the concessions open and things like that, and whether or not you're going to pay for that or people are going to pay for their own. I don't know exactly because actually my associate was the one who, I'm just going to write the check. I'm paying 1,000 something or two, something like that.
So it's not too bad.
It's not too bad.
Yeah.
I mean, man, the best was, I shouldn't say the best because it was kind of on a tragic side, but during COVID, it was $300. We did that a couple times where I rented out just a theater, and because I guess people weren't going to the movies, right?
Yeah.
And then if you rent out the whole theater, $300, then you just bring in your people. So theoretically, they're all in this bubble.
Oh, so you could bring like 100 people, or how many?
I think it was like 50 people. So it's half the capacity of it because it was a small theater, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you could bring 50. And my daughter had a birthday, so we watched Spider-Man, the other one.
Oh, you guys like Spider-Man, I guess, huh?
I love Spider-Man, and well, I used to like Marvel, but don't even get me started on Phase 4. It's been junk lately, I think. Although Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was good.
That's what my son said too.
Yeah.
I didn't see it yet.
Yeah.
So how are you managing your family time? What are you doing for fun? How are you managing that stuff?
I always try to incorporate fun into work stuff. So, like Spider-Verse is going to be fun, but it also has a work component to it. And then, for high sessions, I consider that fun. So I don't really consider that work. So I don't do a lot of fun stuff, like pure fun. And then with the kids, it's more at this age, because my kids are teenager and going to be a teenager soon. It's really just whatever they're into. So like my son plays baseball. So I show up I can't make it to all of them because I do work a lot of weekends, but I'm there most of the time. And then my daughter is more, she goes here and there and is just trying to drive her when I'm Mr. Taxi kind of thing. But, every year we do 10 weeks of summer, which is for 10 weeks after school gets out. I make them watch old school pop culture movies. So we saw like Ghostbusters, Back to the Future, all the old ones. So at least they know those references in life because I feel that that's important.
I don't have to make my kids watch stuff. They just like make them stop watching stuff.
No, okay. Here's the problem with this generation, I think. I have a big pet peeve. They don't watch the movie. They'll see clips of the movie on TikTok and they'll be like, oh, I know that. I'm like, oh, you saw Die Hard? They're like, no, I didn't see the movie, but I seen it on TikTok. That's not the same. You got to watch the movie. There's a whole context to the story. You can't just watch the yippee-ki-yay mother effer part and then, that's all you know. I get very passionate. Pop culture. Yeah.
Why?
I don't know, because I guess it raised me, along with my parents. So I want my kids to have that same experience, but they just poo-poo it. And I'm like, oh, man, this is good stuff.
So you are 45 years old. What would you say has been your greatest challenge in your life so far? And how'd you overcome it?
Well, I can tell you there were 2 times that I felt lost. Well, 3 times. And this may come into more questions. So I'll leave the first one for the last because that's the most significant. But, after I graduated from college and I decided I wasn't going to be a teacher, I felt pretty darn lost because I was applying everywhere. And I had been playing music since I was 14, So whenever I would sit down, I applied at the bank. I applied at this company that does expos. I applied all over the place, and the people would be like, well, what's your work experience? I'm like, well, I was a musician. But I was trying to explain to them that I managed bands, I produced projects, I produced CDs at that time. And I was like, producing a CD is not just you come in and do the recording. You got to go out and promote. No one would hire me, So that was kind of a down moment. The other one is the breakup of Pure Heart. Like you put all of your effort and life and energy into something, and then it kind of fizzles out within a few months, and you think like, I'm never going to be able to do anything successful again, or whatever. This is never going to happen, because you know the significance of it. I mean, it's kind of lightning in a bottle, but life goes on. The third one, which most people don't know about, but I've talked about it before, is when I was younger in the 6th grade, I got bullied a bunch. So now all the 6th graders go to intermediate school, but I was in the first class that ever tried it. So it was at New Valley, and a bunch of us from different schools went to New Valley as 6th graders. We were the only 6th grade class. There was 27 of us, and that was the first in the state. It was an experimental thing, and I was part of that program. And it was 21 boys and 6 girls. And it was just like the worst time ever, just being picked on. And there's only one class, so there was really no escape. Yeah, that was a big turning point in my life, in a weird way. Because I was very nerdy, right? In elementary school, and then you get picked on for being a nerd. And then so now I want to be 7th grade. I want to be like the coolest person in the world. So I'm obsessed with being popular and wearing the right clothes and doing the right thing and stuff like that. And then over time you just like, hey, why not just be a normal, nice person? And then that, that's a transition. Yeah. So I'd say those are the 3 kind of like big turning points, right?
So how did they change your perspective then? Because the last one, you kind of went from, okay, I'm kind of nerdy. I got to be not nerdy, so try to be popular, and then I just want to be me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then, how did the other ones change your perspective or the way you do things now?
So the Pure Heart Challenge, I guess, was, I spent a good amount of time just kind of hibernating at home. I didn't want to go out, see people or whatever. It's kind of embarrassing too, right? It's very public. It's in the newspaper.
That you guys are not a band anymore, or what?
Yeah, it was on the front page of the Honolulu Advertiser on Thanksgiving Day, I remember, and I'll never forgive him for this, because John Berger had got wind of it and had come to our house on the Wednesday, the night before, to interview us about the breakup. And, we kind of like made our statements and stuff. And I remember my dad asking him, like, can you not publish this tomorrow because it's Thanksgiving? And we're going to have the whole family over, and this is not something we want to be discussing at Thanksgiving dinner. And the very next day on Thanksgiving, it's on the very front page of the freaking newspaper. Yeah.
Did you ever confront him?
No, I never did, because at a certain point, it's like, who cares? It's been so many years already or whatever. But I'll never forget it. And that's when you learn about media and what you read in media. Because they always say, right, like, you don't realize how wrong media is or how inaccurate they are until it's about you. And so that's how I know, like, you got to read everything with a kind of grain of salt, because you just never know what the actual story is. Anyway.
That would adjust the way I would think about things. Because that's a pretty strong breach of trust.
Yeah. And you know what? I mean, there are good journalists out there, but a lot of them they want their story. They want to be the first to get the story out, and stuff, and still just screw you over.
So how did you find out on that then? You picked up the paper on Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
You picked it up, or
it's
what?
right there. Well, at that time, it was still no internet and stuff, so everyone still got the paper. So it came that morning. It's like, boom, right there, like on the front page.
Was it derogatory?
It's a lot of like half-truths and stuff like that. And it had the narrative of, we didn't want to say like, oh, we all like are upset at each other and stuff like that. So we just made the narrative that I had to go back to school, which I was doing anyway, But they kind of like made it really sound like it was my dad who like forced me to go back to school. So there was a lot of like people talking later, like, oh, that dad, what is he talking about? So he kind of took the brunt of it for me.
So is that like sensationalized or just misinterpreted or what? Or
yeah,
just,
a little
or
bit.
Maybe worse.
Yeah, a little bit misinterpreted, I guess, I mean, they try to like, they take both narratives and they try to make it into a story. And some of it's just not super accurate. But
so let's say that you're at a dinner party then.
Yeah.
And that dude was sitting right in front of you.
I've talked to him since then, and I've never brought it up. I act like nothing's happened, but...
Oh, so he doesn't even know?
He probably doesn't know, yeah. But
Oh.
who at this point, what difference does it make? It's 20 years ago, 23 years ago. Like
Makes a difference to you.
everything ended up okay. I don't even interact with him anymore. So who cares?
Is the guy alive?
I have no idea.
Oh.
I'm assuming he is.
Would
Like,
be interesting if he didn't
well-
even know. Like, because we had no clue. Then you
Mm.
find out later, like, you know what I mean? Like, holy crap, that's the effect I had, and I didn't mean that. And you know what I mean? That'd be an interesting one.
yeah. But I mean, the other thing was too, like at that time, he had a lot of power because he was the main media guy for the Honolulu Advertiser or Star Bulletin or whatever, and everybody read his column. There's only Wayne Harada was the only alternate too, so I didn't want to go confront him, and then now I'm affecting other because I went into production after that, so I'm bringing other bands, trying to help other bands start, right? And I don't want them to get affected because I have a problem with this guy,
Mm.
So I think that was part of my thinking too. So I just didn't say anything. Just talk to him about it on podcast 20 years later.
You might hear it. You never know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if he did hear it, if this guy did hear this,
Yeah.
and wanted to apologize or reconcile this, then how would he
Oh.
do that?
I'll go talk to my dad. Like they're the ones that got hurt, not me.
So repair it with your dad,
Yeah.
and then you're cool with
Or my
that.
parents or whatever. Yeah. Because for me, like it's one of those like I've crossed that line off and it's done. It's like past already. So
Okay.
yeah. So
Well-
for me, I don't really care.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still in my head. Like I still remember because it was such a bad experience. But I'm sure my parents, they're a little different. They still probably hate that guy.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the whole experience of the PR thing just made me, because then what happened was, I finally get back out there. I'm playing with Justin Young, who's a friend of mine. Then I end up meeting up with Dennis Kamakagi and David Kamakagi, tour with them. That's a lot of fun, And so the lesson I learned from that is like, when these big things happen in your life, you just got to keep going. They work themselves out in their own way. You may not have that same success, but you're going to have success. You got to believe in yourself enough to know that you're not going to be, it's not like I'm shunned and I've never worked in the music business ever again. I still have stuff to do.
Mhm.
So you just got to just keep putting one foot in front of the other,
So if there was something helpful that came out of that, like that serves you now from that, going
Well-
through that experience, what would it be?
Well, I just had a big career change, move companies. And it's very scary to do that after being 20 years at one company and trying to move to another company. But because of that other experience with Pure Heart and where I ended up, I could do it and feel confident that as long as I continue to do a good job and continue to work hard, that this is going to work itself out, in the long run. So it's just more like a perspective thing that I think you don't have when you're younger, right?
Mhm.
You think something, and that's why like, a lot of people like they break up with their girlfriend and just like, oh, I can't go on, kind of thing. And I'm making fun of them or anything because it is serious. But, as you get older, you realize, oh, things happen and, there's bad things that happen and you keep putting one foot in front of the other and eventually they get better and you get some distance from it. And, it works out
Mhm.
in some way for some reason, right?
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense because I talk to kind of a lot of people in regards to their lives or careers and so on.
Yeah.
And good and bad is just a judgment
Right.
in a snapshot of time.
Right.
Somebody would say, oh my gosh, it's the worst thing that happened to me. I just got laid off or I split with my company or so on. And in the moment, it's really like it feels terrible and painful and you would label that bad. But then they make some adjustments, something else comes down the line or so on. And then 10 years later, it's like, thank God that happened.
Right.
Because otherwise I would still be there potentially and not in these things that happen. So like even for us, my wife and I, we were in California in 2000. We were with the company, had all kinds of promises that did not come through, didn't work out, and we had to come home. And it was like, this is bad. This is bad. I don't know what's going on. But then that's when we had seen Bubble Tea initially.
Oh yeah,
out
yeah.
there. And then decided when we came back here, you know what? There's nothing here. Let's try and get this thing started. And that's like 20 something years ago, and that
Right.
company's still going strong. So, you look back on it and say, okay, best thing that ever happened. But, at the time it was pretty darn painful. I wouldn't have,
Yeah.
Or even more than that, actually, that I'm thinking now is in 2018 when, my wife got really sick, and then I got second-degree burns, and then I got sick, and then I broke my back. And
Yeah.
people were like, oh my gosh, you could say, oh, that was bad. But it set off probably the greatest period of like healing and personal growth that I've ever been through. I wouldn't want to do it again, but I would.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's inevitable,
Mhm.
right? These type of events are inevitable. And so it's just how you react to them, because you can only control you, right? Can't.
Well, I heard a really good saying too that is pain is inevitable, but suffering isn't.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Suffering isn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you take that into mind, like, okay, I can keep going, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it preps you because, as we get older, life becomes harder, as you start getting to the end there. So it's good to have that kind of perspective.
Well, you and
right?
you just entered it, and so on. We're in middlescence, right? So
Right, right, right.
adolescence, which is a coined phrase that wasn't even around maybe 100-something years ago, which is when you become a teenager, your hormones change, you become going from a kid to an adult. You're going from your household into the real world, moving from non-working to a career, a job. You're moving out of your house, maybe. Back then probably, yeah. These days, because the cost of housing, maybe not. But then, you're moving out, you're separating from your parents, and you're trying to do that.
Right.
Middlescence, 45, your hormones are changing.
Right.
They're dropping, right?
Right.
Moving from the last stage of your career into the non-career. Parents are all getting older. So if they have not passed away or gotten sick, or you haven't had to be a caregiver yet, that time is coming. Right. Kids are getting older, starting to move out of the house. There's all of these changes going on. So, I think it's Chip Connolly who talks about this, and he's the guy who started a huge, like, I don't know if it's huge, but he's like a boutique hotel chain, and then he became one of the execs at Airbnb.
Okay.
So he shows that like your level of happiness in adolescence like drops, and then it goes up after that, and then your level in middlescence of happiness drops, and then it goes up kind of after that. So a lot of it's been interesting because you figure, okay, you're 50, you should be at the height of your game, but a lot of times it's not always true. You know what I mean? You feel like I feel slower. I'm not as sharp. My body is not as agile or as strong. It's definitely an interesting change.
So I guess a good podcast or something to listen to would be like, how do you prep for that? Because I
That's
mean,
what this podcast is me search, right?
Yeah,
That's what
yeah,
our
yeah.
podcasts are. Me search, looking for answers.
Because I see it coming, like my parents are getting older, and I've, the interesting thing about being in a real estate firm is the average age of a realtor is 55.
Mhm.
All right. So I was a very young realtor, kind of unusual, but I saw all my peers, all these guys are 50s and older, they all had to take care of their parents at the same time they're paying for college. That's why they kept working and stuff. And so I know that that's coming. That's part of the cycle that I'm entering into. And it's how you just prep yourself for that, because
Yeah. I don't know if you can prep yourself for
Yeah.
that other than have a proper support.
it's almost
network
like having a kid. Like people talk to you about it all the time, but you just got to kind of do it, because
Yeah, I don't
you
think
can't
you can prep.
mentally like prep yourself for the craziness that is parenthood.
I guess if maybe you could prep, then maybe someone can tell me on how that would be done. But
Yeah.
I think it's really about what kind of support I think can you set up during that process, because your parents are still pretty healthy.
Yeah, both of them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Pretty good.
and that's good, and take advantage of that because realistically, as parents are getting older, especially if you don't live next to them, you don't have that much time. Like, let's say somebody lives in the mainland. I forget who was telling me this, but they were like, if let's say I live away from my parents and I see them for a few weeks a year because we visit or so on, then if you aggregate, you combine that into, let's say they live, I don't know, 10 years, you're really not talking about too much time. It's not really
Right.
10 years. It's the number of weeks. And then
Yeah.
what state are they in? Because at the later stages, I mean, my father, he's just passed away a few months ago. And the last bit of that it was not my father. I mean, like
Right,
he
right,
was,
right.
but he wasn't, it was diminished. You know what I
Right.
mean? He couldn't do anything. And it was just so frustrating for him and everybody
Right.
around him to just feel that.
Yeah, you're making me rethink. I made it a thing, and I got to admit to you, I've been bad on about it. But I thought, because my dad, 79,
Oh,
and he just told me, he's like, oh, I'm going to turn 79 this year. I was like, what? Like, I still think of him as like in his 60s, but I guess obviously he's. And then you get to 80, that number in my mind is kind of oh my gosh, now you're like, you're old, 80, right? So I was like, oh man, this year I better, because you're right. I mean, I live very close to my parents. I see them often, but it's usually just to drop the kids off or pick the kids up.
yeah.
And I walk in and I go and I get a snack and then I'm out of there. I'm like, I better kind of go there more and just hang out, just sit around and watch TV or something.
Yeah. I mean, just because they're physically alive doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily mean, there's people who are physically alive, but it's not the same. It's like
Yeah.
you go through these different stages of grief, and it's like an anticipatory, you start anticipating it and you feel like, oh, I already kind of grieving, but that's not how this thing works.
Yeah. Because it's not, you don't feel the finality till it's
Yeah.
done, right?
Yeah. Which is interesting to me because I always thought that I was going to just feel just pure relief. My dad was suffering
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
end.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh my gosh, this is just, it's worse to be alive.
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is sad to say, but it is. But then when he actually passed, it was like the waves of grief were so intense that I was surprised, actually. Like, I've been prepping for this
Right.
for years. And you know what I mean? I train in this area. Wow. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So that part is definitely super hard, especially if you have a close relationship with your parents, and especially if you don't,
Right. Yeah, that's true.
because this is the time to get those repairs done if possible.
Right.
While you can.
Yeah. And I guess my kind of paranoid, anxiety-ridden brain, that's why a lot of these types of the pure heart relationships and things like that, I can feel them eating at me, And so I have to do something about it because it's always on my mind.
Yeah.
I can't get rid of it. So luckily right now I don't feel like I have any of those out there.
Yeah.
Kind of taking care of all of
That's
that
a nice
stuff.
place to kind of be because that's navigating life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Except now maybe John Berger might be upset with me.
I wouldn't be surprised if this guy catches wind of this, listens to it and goes, I didn't realize that what was going on, and reaches out to you or your father, because the guy's probably pretty old right now.
Oh yeah, he's got to be at least in his 60s.
And although,
60s at least.
people, as we get older, you get a bit more set in your ways and so on.
Yeah.
But I kind of find, too, that as people get older, especially, if you had a relationship with them, they're more willing to kind of do the repairs needed
Right.
because they know they're getting closer to death and they're
Right.
thinking about that.
Right.
And they don't want to leave that way. So these disconnections that occur that cause that kind of, pain or discord, they want to reconnect. Because at the end of the day, nothing that you have you can take. So
Right.
last year I had 8 friends die. A good chunk of them my age. I mean, the only thing you can take with you at that point is your relationships.
Yeah. I mean,
That's what is the most important.
yeah, that's what I'm saying too. Is because I have a podcast which I'll plug on this show, the High
There you go.
Sessions Hawaii podcast. But my two co-hosts, Devin and Kyle, they're a little older than me, so they're in the same boat as you. So I see that coming too. Which is,
So they're old futs then.
well, they're not that old, but
They're old, like you.
they've just had those kind of experiences too, all of a sudden. So I've been hearing it from them too. So yeah, I mean it is part of life, but yeah.
I mean, we're all going to go through it. It
Yeah.
reminds me of when I first learned to kite surf in 2004. I flew with my friend to North Carolina. It's called Cape Hatteras because it's you can learn really easily in the sound right there, which is that kind of
Okay.
brackish water. So anyways, right up above there is a place called Kitty Hawk where the Wright brothers were
Okay.
flying their first plane, and they would have these hang gliding kind of tours because they have these giant sand dunes. They're like these huge mountains of sand. So what you would do is you take the hang glider, you run off the thing, and you go into it, and then the instructor guy, he's holding onto like a rope that's on the side. I don't know what the heck he's going to do with that rope, but then you end up at the bottom, and then what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to push the thing out in front of you, and then it stalls a bit, and then you land. Like the way he did it looks so beautiful. You know, he's gliding, and then he's gliding, and he goes, "Floop," and he lands like a butterfly, and you're like, okay, this is how it's done. So we go in order, right? I think there's like probably like 7 or 8 people in front of me. Every single one of them crashed. Like one looked like backwards. Like I was like, holy crap, can I get my money back? Like, oh my God. But it's like, already, like chances are 100% of people crashing.
You're gonna
It's
crash.
just how am I going to crash? And that's kind of how I feel in terms of this parent area, right? It's like, it's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming at some
It's
point.
like Neo on that building, right? No one makes that jump on the first try, even Neo.
Yeah, the crash is coming. Like it's
Yeah.
I'm not looking forward to it. So you just got to do what you can now. Do what you can now. Make an adjustment now.
Yeah. But you take all of that energy and then you put it into the kids, right?
You mean after they're passed away?
Well, yeah. I mean, you take the grief and try to turn it into something positive, and hopefully that goes into the next generation.
I mean, try to. The grief expert that I was listening to, he said that for grief to heal, you need your grief to be witnessed by others.
Oh.
And that witnessing needs to be in non-judgmental, no, categorizing, or you just letting it express how it's expressed. Like I know for my dad's funeral, we were going back and forth on, are we going to have a visitation line, this and that? Do we want to? But then I know where I stand on it now. Initially, I was like, I don't know about that. But now it's like, no, let's just do it because other people need to express their grief.
I
Let
see.
us express ours and let us all witness it together. I mean, it's a tradition for a reason, probably.
Yeah.
And then let's
That's
see if
true.
we can get it done. Almost like pulling the Band-Aid off one time versus, little bit at a time.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I don't know. That's my thought. We'll see. It's the experiment. See how that goes. So as we kind of wind this thing down, because we've been talking for kind of a long time.
I appreciate you having me on. It's kind of fun.
Well, yeah, I know. It's fun. And thank you for
Because
coming
on our
and being
podcast, we're always
and being-
interviewing other people, so I never, I try to talk over people, but I'm not good at it. Your brother's good at talking over other people.
Is he?
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So-
Your brother, I love your brother.
Mhm.
He's one of the coolest people that I know.
You're the one that loves him?
I'm the one that loves him.
No, just kidding.
I find
He's
him
a
to
good
be
guy.
one
What are
of
we
the
talking about?
best, like, he makes my life better. I'll just put it that way.
I mean, isn't that what it's about, right?
Yeah,
In
yeah.
relationships in general, is if you're around someone that all they do is suck your energy and take, then that's probably not the person you want to hang out with.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you remember how you met? I met you at that one
Yes,
mixer thing in
exactly.
like downtown or whatever, and I was like, hey, you should talk to my brother.
Yeah. You are the impetus of me meeting your brother and High Sessions becoming financially feasible.
Wow.
So if it wasn't for you, those two things would have never happened. We'd probably be done. We probably would have stopped High Sessions in 2014 or something.
Wow.
Yeah.
So interesting.
You've
to hear
allowed
that
us
kind
to
of
go
stuff.
on for another 10 years.
And hopefully further.
Hopefully more. Yeah.
Yeah. Because especially now as I'm re-entering into this realm of content creation and so on, I'm just treating it differently. Like this is my kind of expression to be able to connect with people in a different way. And it puts me into a format that I make that happen, right? During
Yeah.
COVID, and I'm pretty social. I mean, I would say my networking abilities are fairly high.
Yeah. Very
But after COVID, I was like, I even found myself having a tough time re-engaging.
good. Yeah.
And I'm out there.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
like, it's I can't be the only one. And so this brings a way to reconnect, to connect, and that's what it's all about. Like I've really narrowed everything down into like one word, which is connection, and that comes from same. So I have the shirt here, right? I showed you before. It's the Aloha shirt. It's like the hidden meanings in the orange, right? You have the A and the L, and if you're just listening to it, I guess you got to look at the video. But this was done by my friend Pono Shim, one of the guys who passed away last year.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and Pono used to always talk about connection versus correction. Connection versus correction, right? We all are wanting and needing connection. And the way you kind of mess that up is always trying to correct.
Mm-hmm.
So I've thought about that so much that is like by far the North Star crux of everything that I do nowadays is based around connection. So that's connection with you, connection with me and my work, me and my family, me and the universe, me and what, you know what I mean? It's the connections, because you can tell when those are weak, that's when there's problems. Me and my body, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When the connection there is weak, you have a problem.
You stretch?
Do I stretch?
Yeah.
Do you see all those things over there? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like I have these long, I try, yeah.
Once you turn 40, stretching is very important.
But you know that's how my brother hurt himself, right?
Is that how?
Yeah. He was stretching during like warming up for PT, and then he pulled out his back again, and then he was like 1 month out. Yeah. It was from the tragic PT stretching.
Stretching.
Yeah.
Everything gets you, man.
Yeah. So is there anything that you wanted to mention?
No, that's it. I just I enjoy doing these types of podcasts. I very rarely get asked to be on podcasts, even though I'm on a podcast. And so just you having me here is quite an honor, and I appreciate you listening to my story.
I just want to spend some time acknowledge you, Jon. You've been a good friend, not just to me, but to my brother and people that I know. I know you as somebody who is selfless. You will work extremely hard, spend your own money to help others and a cause that is meaningful to you.
Thanks.
So
yeah,
I just wanted you to know that.
Thanks. And again, you've always been there for me, man. And all the high sessions thing blew my mind. You blew my mind with that. And it's been a good run. It's been a good run, and I thank you for having me on.
Okay. And then how do people find you if they want to find you?
I would say just Google my name. Like, there's so many. You can find me musically, videos. You can go. I'm sure my real estate website pops up when you Google my name.
Jon Yamasato.
Jon Yamasato. Yep. And
Yamasato.
Yep.
First name Jon.
Yep.
Yeah. No H.
Nope.
Yeah.
And it just there's a ton. I'm not hard to find. My phone number is out there. My email is out there. Like, it's easy to find me. There's no way people should have a hard time.
Okay. Cool. Appreciate it.
All right, man.
Thank you.
Well, until the next one.
Yeah, for sure. We'll see how this comes out.
If you resonate with Greater Good Radio, please join our community at www.greatergoodradio.com, where you can get access to exclusive content and offerings. Hope to see you soon.